All right, so yesterday marked the 1 year anniversary, I suppose. I don't know if anniversary is really the best word, but it's been 1 year since the police murder of Andrew Brown Jr. in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. April 21, 2021 was, at that moment, was when Pasquotank County Sheriff deputies went into Elizabeth City and shot and murdered Andrew Brown Jr., shot him in the back of the head as he was attempting to flee the scene over an alleged arrest warrant. Later on, they said that they had no arrest warrant. Actually, it was a search warrant. Then later on, we found out the search warrant wasn't even properly itemized, right? And so that was a year ago as of yesterday. And so I've got some, I want to do a little bit of like a thing. I've got some tweet threads here of some pictures and video. Once again, I want to show this photo because this is an important photo. This is the Sheriff's Department coming in to Perry Street, Elizabeth City, with a pickup truck. And as you can see, there are about 5 people on the back of the truck, and they are holding machine guns. They are holding assault rifles. Now, you ask me why you would need 5 motherfuckers with machine guns to do a search warrant. I would love to know in what universe a search warrant requires 5 motherfuckers with machine guns. And another thing important to understand is this is Andrew Brown's house. This is a little tweet thread from Alet Colston on Twitter. This is Andrew Brown's house. So again, it's not like, you're searching through like a giant mansion, like a Scarface or something, right? Andrew Brown lived in a relatively small house. This is the location. This lot right here is the location where Andrew Brown Jr. was murdered. So again, you tell me why you would need to have 5 motherfuckers with machine guns going in to do a quote-unquote search warrant in this kind of house. So again, April 21, 2021, that was, I believe, 2 days or 1 day after Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd that happened in May of 2020. He was sentenced, or I think it was announced that he was guilty or found guilty, I think. He was found guilty on either April 19 or April 20 of 2021. And then, again, the next day, Andrew Brown Jr. was murdered. This became a national news story. And so yesterday, there was demonstrations in the the over the course. I've got a tweet thread here from John Dowding on Twitter. There was a series of demonstrations, press conferences over the murder 1 year mark. And so, there's a little video here as well. As you can see, they went around through downtown and marched all the way around to the waterfront, a very similar route from when I was following this story last year. Now, again, the protests, they happened, I would say the bulk of the protests happened over the course of April 21st all the way up to maybe like July, like mid-July. At that point, the protests, ended up being a couple of people, myself included, all the way up until January, when, needless to say, I don't live in Elizabeth City anymore. But anyway, so it's good to see that for the 1 year anniversary of this, that there's a lot of people coming out. But I also want to show some stuff from April 21st, 2021. I showed up at the city council where there was an emergency session, and this is my tweet thread of, that day. There was a bunch of state troopers, a bunch of sheriff's deputies and Elizabeth City people, bunch of guns at the Elizabeth City City Hall. I have some videos as well from this as well. And now, as you can see, this is from the day of. There was crowds of hundreds and hundreds of people. A lot of people did a lot of various things, clogged up a lot of roads. As you can see, this is people doing a die-in, which is, simulating you being shot dead in the middle of the street en masse as a way to occupy traffic. As you can see, there's some other videos here. This is when the CVS actually boarded this up. Like, I remember when we were, because, I was around this area when I went downtown. And so I remember when I was walking downtown, I saw that CVS was not boarded up. And then like 2 hours later, when we came back downtown, I guess this isn't downtown. This is like Airing House, which is outside of downtown. But anyway, then like all the shops were boarded up. Like it was within like an hour or two span, which is pretty entertaining. I got a bunch of other videos, but none that I have readily available at this moment. But anyway, so what happened in that last year? There's a lot that I could talk about, and I wanted to prepare a much larger segment for this, but I did not do so. So I'm just going to be kind of ranting and raving here. But what happened in that last year, right? So it's been 366 days since Andrew Brown Jr. was murdered in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So a couple weeks later, the district attorney, Andrew Womble, unfortunately having the same first name as Andrew Brown Jr., announced that the deputies were fearing for their safety. Their lives were at stake. Where have we heard that before? Am I right, people? Now, of course, their claim is that because an officer reached out and touched the edge of the car that Andrew Brown Jr. was in, he was driving away from the police officers, right? Accelerating away from them, trying to not get shot and killed, which unfortunately he was unsuccessful at doing. And one of the police officers reached out and touched the car. And so Andrew Womble, the district attorney, said that, well, they touched the car, and so that means that the car hit them. They made there's no, in Andrew Womble's mind, the district attorney, right, who decides whether or not to prosecute the police in this instance, as long as the car and one of the officers' flesh make any contact whatsoever, it doesn't matter that the cop literally leapt into the car, right, and reached out, jumped out and touched the car. It doesn't matter who touched who, but just the matter, the fact that the car touched an officer's flesh means that it's okay for a completely unrelated person who's way in the back to just start shooting Andrew Brown Jr. in the back of the head. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Once again, I cite the statistic. You can look up mapping police violence online. They study police violence and police murders. 98%, specifically 98.3% in 2021, of police that murder people do not even ever face charges. So not only are they apparently so-called justified in their actions, right? But they never actually go to court and have a jury find them to be innocent or find that their shooting is justified. If you were so sure that what you did was right, noble, moral, and justified, shooting someone in the back of the head as they were running away, wouldn't you at least, for the sake of optics, want to go to trial and be found innocent, be found exonerated? But they don't do that because they know that they would lose in a lot of these instances, and they have the power because the state controls, the district attorney controls how they prosecute criminal charges. They have the power to just cover it up and not even deal with it. And so basically, for the last year in Elizabeth City, it's been a constant struggle for the citizens to create a so-called citizen advisory board. To my understanding, the Citizen Advisory Board was announced to have been successfully formed earlier this month, marking the 12-month anniversary, or 12 months later. Now, again, what really matters here is, does the Citizen Advisory Board have any power whatsoever? Are they able to actually, do they have subpoena power? Are they able to actually get any sort of rules changed, any laws or anything whatsoever? The answer to all these questions is, of course, no. What it does is it provides just a pathway of communication, right? Just a way for, the citizens in this board to talk to the police. But we have already had those channels open. Fun fact, the sheriff of Pasquotank County, his name is Tommy Wooten II. In May, or it may have been June 1st of 2020, there was a solidarity demonstration in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, over the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. As you may remember, cities all across the country and the world had solidarity demonstrations with Minneapolis, and Sheriff Tommy Wooten, it was either late May or June 1st of 2020, stood up on a soapbox at one of these solidarity demonstrations, right? For whatever reason, a cop was allowed to speak. I don't know why. I don't know who greenlit that, but that's okay. It's not okay, but whatever. And he gave out his personal phone number and said, quote, "Nothing like this will ever happen in Elizabeth City, and I'm going to give everyone my cell phone number so that if something like this ever happens, you can call me and we can deal with it." Well, fast forward less than a year to April 21, 2021. His department responsible for the murder of Andrew Brown Jr., he changed his cell phone number. I believe it was like April 23rd of 2021, right? So he did this big speech, right, in May or June of 2020 saying no George Floyd would ever happen in our Elizabeth City. Less than a year later, of course, something like that exactly did happen, and he went back on his word immediately. It took him, actually, I think it was like 130 days after the shooting of Andrew Brown Jr., it took him around 120 or 30 days for him to even speak to anyone about it. To even speak to any person about it at all, other than media, other than, politicians, right? Other than, like, his, like, favorite, like, white racist church-going people that he would go to, right? He took over 3 months, closer to 4 months, to even talk to anyone outside of his bubble and sphere. Now, of course, I filmed that interaction, and so you can look that up if you'd like. But anyway, it took him that long, and when that interaction happened, it was so long after the initial situation that he was just saying, oh, just let the process. He didn't answer any questions. Just let the process play out. I can't answer anything, but I really want to answer stuff. I really want to, but I can't because the process, we're in this and that, and all these laws and rules and regulations, I was wondering, weren't there rules and regulations that would have prevented you from murdering Andrew Brown Jr.? Apparently, you could violate rules and regulations to kill someone to end another human's life, but to answer a question, so if you're already breaking the law, right? You've already broken the law in killing someone. You've already violated just human rights and ethics and morals killing someone, right? But now all of a sudden you're afraid to answer a question because the process. It's bullshit. You don't care about the process. Anyway, the police, the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Elizabeth City Police, did a horrible job managing these protests that happened in April, May, and June, and July of 2021. There were several incidents over the course, and maybe over the next couple of weeks I will do more talks about this because this is now a year old. But, just as a real quick roundup, there were several instances of citizen violence against protesters that police did not do anything about. Most notably was the incident with, I forget her name, but there was someone, you can look this up, someone driving into a crowd of protesters. A police car blocked the road, essentially, and this person was trying to get around the police car to get into the road with protesters. Now, one thing to be very we need to know about this information is that after about 2 weeks of protest, the city and the so-called leaders, and I don't say that there were no leaders of the movement, but, some people who represented the movement, went to make a deal with the city where they would allow permit, like a parade permit for the protest to technically give them legal demonstration status. And so, a lot of people say, oh, you're in the street, that's illegal. In this instance, legally, the protesters were allowed to be in the street. So anyway, someone whom I'm forgetting the name of went around the police car. Well, actually, to be clear, the police car drove out of the way after communicating with them, drove out of the way, and then let them into the street. They ran into 3 people. 2 of them were severely injured. And the police basically did nothing. They kind of just let her get away until she was arrested later on down the street, like way, way down the street. They kind of just let her drive around through the crowd. Fortunately, people ran away and she didn't hit any more than 3 people. And she has gotten preferential and special treatment by the justice system. She has hired a top lawyer, and actually she has gotten her case kicked so far down the road that I think that her next court date is still again, this is a year later now. I think her next court date is still coming up in summer. So she's been walking around scot-free, paid no fines really, has no jail time really, since this racist hate crime. And that's just the most egregious example. Elizabeth City Police said they made a deal with the citizens in regards to these permits. They made a deal saying, we will give you permits and we will protect you from crazy people, and you'll be able to get your voice out or whatever fucking garbage that they came up with, and they failed to uphold their end of the deal. And for that, the Elizabeth City chief of police at the time, Eddie Buffalo, was promoted. That's right, because in this country, when you do a horrible job and you fail tremendously at doing everything that you've signed up for, you get a promotion, right? So the chief of police, Eddie Buffalo, who, by the way, also did 0 public appearances at all throughout the entire duration of the protest. He did 0 public appearances, just like the sheriff of the county. Now, technically, again, the shooting and murder of Andrew Brown Jr. Ostensibly drove a wedge between the city police as well as the county sheriff's department. The police said that the sheriff should have talked to them beforehand, the police, and instead of just going in there without communication. But once again, the chief of police did no public appearances. He did a couple things in front of media, and that was a little bit, but he did not come out and say hello to protesters. He did not come out and do this and that, and for that he got a promotion. I believe it was May, maybe June. It might have been June of 2021, the governor of North Carolina and the attorney general, Roy Cooper, the governor, and Josh Stein, I believe is the attorney general, came to Elizabeth City, right, and met with the police chief and met with a bunch of people. I got to meet the governor and ask him, several questions about basically regarding our safety in this city when it comes to the police not doing their jobs. So Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, listened to people, including myself, discuss safety for protesters at the behest of the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Elizabeth City Police Department not doing their end of the bargain. And he listened to all of our concerns, did nothing at all to protect anybody, left, and then gave the chief of police a promotion. That's right, Eddie Buffalo is no longer chief of police of Elizabeth City. He is now public safety director of the state of North Carolina. He got a promotion. The governor of North Carolina, after listening to everyone say that they feel unsafe in the city, gave one of the chief architects of that unsafety a promotion. Think about that. It's one giant club of people failing upward. Now, let's go back to the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department. After 3 to 4 months of unsuccessfully trying to combat protesting and kill the movement, the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department decided to try another strategy. This is another major thing I want to talk about because I was heavily involved in this, so I know a lot of details. What happened was they ostensibly opened a line of communication saying, if you feel unsafe, right? If you feel unsafe at all in any way, you know what you should do? You should come tell us. You should walk into our police station and tell us why you feel unsafe, because we're here to help you. So on one day, I forget what day it was, I joined a couple of protesters. It was about 12 people. A couple of people, and they went in to report that apparently people had threatened a group of people on Facebook and said that they were going to inflict violence on them. They went to report it. Now, the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department, quote-unquote, investigated this report, and instead of doing anything about it or deciding to say, hey, these aren't real threats, or these threats are, you shouldn't take them too seriously, or, oh, there's some missing context, I know this person, they're not that violent. Instead, what they decided to do was place charges on all of the people who went to the police station that day, including myself, because I went there to record the interaction. And so the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Department basically laid out a trap. And this is why, in my opinion, you should never talk to police. I think that talking to police has potential value, but you should never actually talk to police and engage with police in a way where you actually think that they're going to do anything to help you, right? Talking to police can be decent for rhetorical purposes, but if you in any way, shape, or form actually find yourself even remotely believing the cops are ever going to do anything positive for you or anyone else, you are delusional. You have fallen for it. You have fallen for the propaganda. You are delusional. I'm sorry. Now, again, do I think if police say that you should go there and to report things if you feel unsafe, do I think you should take them up on that offer just as a way to waste their time at the very... Probably, sure, you should take them up on their offer. But again, you should be prepared. So what they did was they decided to place bullshit, trumped up charges on a bunch of people. sending a bunch of people to deal with court cases. And eventually, I was myself involved in this court debacle. It was going through back and forth the court. They arrested several dozen protesters as well, but they could not arrest me. I just want to say I was running the fuck away from these cops for the several weeks. They were personally very upset with my involvement. They did not like the fact that I recorded everything that they did, and they could not find a way to arrest me because I would keep running away from them. So they eventually got their opportunity to, send me to court. So what happened was, not only did they charge people for filing a police report, what they did was they published everyone's address in a Facebook post. Now, the Facebook page, the Pasquotank County Facebook page, is mostly followed by right-wing psychopaths, right? You know, right-wingers love cops. So basically, the Pasquotank County heard reports of people feeling unsafe. They decided to report to the cops, that, hey, we feel unsafe. They decided to send all of those people's addresses to the very people that were making them feel unsafe, right? So that's crazy. That's Looney Tunes. I had people come to my house. I had people, several times, honking their horns and saying a bunch of racial slurs in front of my house. I don't know if they knew that I was a white person, but, all kinds of stuff. And so it was baffling. It was bizarre that the police, again, in response to people feeling unsafe, would make them less safe. Can you believe that shit? But anyway, the court case is really funny because they basically did nothing. It was just a waste of time. All they having spending $0 can send you to court several times, kick the can down the road. Eventually, they showed up to court. They subpoenaed people from Facebook, like some random commenters from Facebook, to testify on behalf of the state. They didn't even show up. The people they subpoenaed did not even show up, and so they failed the case. Even the judge was making fun of the police department, saying that they had no idea what they were doing. And when a right-wing psychopath judge is making fun of you, whoops. Right? So, once again, there's a lot to talk about from the protests. Again, riot police beating the shit out of journalists, out of press, people that, were, again, working with news agencies were being arrested. USA Today journalists were being arrested and hauled around in fucking, vans and buses. It was insane. I will probably talk about this a lot more over the next coming weeks, given the fact that it has been a year since a lot of these events happened. But again, these are some of my videos that I took. And you can see some of the, where is it? You can see this is a demonstration from yesterday as well. And so people are, still doing demonstrations. It has been going on, and this is a big news story for me. And as well as I think everyone that watches my show or has watched my show over the last year has probably heard about this story, but if not, then there you go. But again, I need to let everyone know that, yes, protesting is good and valuable, but also the police will always try to satiate you in whatever way possible without giving up any power. And that's what they've been doing, is they've been saying, oh, we'll give you a citizen advisory panel, we'll do this and that and other things. And the real question is, do you have power? If something like this happens again, if Andrew Brown Jr., if a situation like that happens again, another unarmed black person is shot in the back of the head and murdered, is the citizen advisory panel going to be able to do anything? I hope so. I really genuinely hope so. But to be honest with you, I am fearful that nothing really tangible has been, presented. And this is a problem all across the country. You see this in cities all across the country. There's police shootings and police murders and, people getting killed and very seriously injured by police all across the country, and there's very little success stories. The conviction of Derek Chauvin is one of the only success stories that people can hang their hats on. And even then, what's going on in Minneapolis, look at what happened with Amir Locke, right? The mayor of Minneapolis, after the murder of George Floyd, made a bunch of compromises. We'll reform the police a little bit and all this, no more no-knock warrants. We got a panel, a board. And then, look, they did a no-knock warrant, even though it was apparently not allowed. They killed and murdered someone named Amir Locke. And 2 years later, nothing has changed in Minneapolis, right? So if George Floyd and what happened after George Floyd couldn't change anything, right? Can something like what's happening in small cities like Elizabeth City, can that really change anything? Who knows? But does that mean you should give up? Absolutely not. In my opinion, right? In my opinion, you should protest every single day that you possibly can. You should make your voice known every single day that you possibly can, because at the very least, one of the best things that can come out of protests is community organization, meeting your neighbor, learning more about the people that live in your city, making new friends, right? This, that, and learning more about people that live around you, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that you can really take away. And the bigger and better the organizational power of people, is the stronger they're going to be able to react in times of crisis. 1 year ago, if you look at 1 year ago from like one of these videos, almost like, there's a lot of people that know each other and, stuff like that. But a lot of people, having been there throughout the whole time, did not know each other. A lot of people in the first week of the protests, a lot of people would like walk up to you and say, hi, how long have you been here? And meet people, you make new friends, that kind of stuff. And so you look at what happened 1 year ago, a lot of people acting in solidarity without knowing each other, or maybe vaguely knowing each other, remembering each other from school, etc., to people walking in solidarity a year later, probably knowing everyone else in the crowd. And that is the biggest takeaway from these experiences, is that people, again, you make friends, you build organizational power, and hopefully eventually, that can translate into actual reform of these corrupt institutions. And that's why I will always recommend protesting. If there's ever anything to protest, even if you don't think that there's going to be any actual change from your protest in the politics, right? The fact that you can go and meet like-minded people that care about the same thing that you do, that is an invaluable experience. And in my opinion, it is something that, I recommend everyone to do. There you go. That's 1 year. I'll probably talk about this a lot more over the next few weeks as well. But definitely one of the biggest things that I've done in my life when it comes to experiences. So I have a lot to say.